So Parsha Shoftim. This is like, that coffee they used to have chock full of nuts. This Parsha is like filled with mitzvahs. You can go through the entire book of Bereshis and have 3 mitzvahs, and you have in every 10 lines you got like 6. So there's lots of mitzvahs here. And this begins with a very interesting introduction as well, which is Shoftim v'Shoftim titein lecha b'chal sharecha asher Hashem Elokecha nosin lecha. You should make judges and police in the gateways of every place that the Lord your God has given you, in order that they should judge the people righteously. So Rashi explains what this means by judges and police. So he says that customarily in history, they used to have the courthouse at the gateway to the city. That's where it was. So you'd have a judge at the gate. Right, the judge would. You'd come if you had a court case. You would go to the gateway, and that's where all the judging was done in every city in that era. So that's why it says you should have the judges in all of your gates. Now the police is a new thing. We don't have any reference before in the Torah to police, people who are guards more so than judges. And he says, so we know what judges are for. Rashi says, "Dayanim haposkim esedin." They're judges. They can tell you what the law is. You come in and you have a disagreement with someone, they'll tell you who's right and who's wrong. But what is the role of the police? So he says, "Horidan esa'am achrei mitzvosam, shemechin v'kosim b'makal v'veritzua ad shekibu alav esedin hashofet." First, they do is they inspire people to keep the mitzvos, and then with a stick and a strap, they make sure that people follow the rules that the judges made. So if you go to court and the judge says this is the answer to the case, the police enforce it. It's like the police here. But you'd say that it's a funny thing that you're going to have religious police. But that's what we're talking about. Police who come in to see that people keep the religious laws. Right? For us, that's very foreign, how we can have such a thing. But it actually shouldn't be foreign to us, because basically we're living in a society that's a theocratic society, that it's a society that's run by way of Torah. And therefore, if you don't follow the Torah, you don't follow the law. Right? If the law is that one does not conduct business on Shabbat, on Saturday, and you do, so then the police will come in and enforce the law. Right, today we say, well, we're living in a sort of a non-judgmental society. We don't want to make a judgment, so if somebody opens their store on Shabbos, we don't do anything. Right? Now, is it good for them? Not necessarily. It's good for them. They may think it is, but we don't believe it is. So we don't have police to do that, and people would look at it very harshly and say, how you can have police for your religion? But if your society and your government is based on the religion, then it's perfectly logical. You have to have police. You are going to have people, no matter what your society teaches, who for whatever reason think that they can take shortcuts or they can ignore laws for their own benefit. Laws are really there for the benefit of others. Right? I have laws of running a business, how I treat my staff, safe environment, right? All these types of things in my work. How much do I pay? When do I pay? How do I, how do I judge all the hours that they're working? How responsible are they to me when they're working? And all of these are laws. So that in a society like Canada, we have enforcement of these laws. If you have a business and you don't follow the laws, they'll close your business, they'll fine you, they can even charge you criminally. So in a society that's run by religion, the same thing happens. Because you will always have people who think they know better. People who think they can get away with it. People who think they're smarter. And therefore they'll always try to do that. And it hurts the others. Right? If I'm going to say that I'm providing a chemical for a drug that's needed, and I find it cheaper than I'm selling it now, but the one that I find cheaper is impure, and the one I'm selling now is pure, and I simply switch them and don't tell anybody, right? That's dangerous. You can't just go and do that to people. And here you see that the police would stop that. So in the Judaism also, we have the same thing. So that's what they're for. So then it tells you, if you're going to have judges, al siteh mishpat, you should not bend judgment. Lo takir panim, don't recognize a face. Lo tikach shochad, don't take bribes. Ki hashoched ya'aver einei chachamim, because bribery dims the eyes, blinds the eyes of the wise. But yisalev divrei tzadikim, and it makes crooked the words of the righteous. Right. So the next thing they tell you is, if we're talking about judges, so as far as the judge is concerned, a judge has to, first thing, he can't recognize one person. That is to say, if you have a court case, you can't treat one member of the case different than the rest. You can't say, this guy, I know this guy and I know he's honest, and this guy I don't know, and I'm the judge. I'm going to treat this guy with respect because I know him. This guy I don't know, I won't. You're not allowed to do that. A judge has to treat everyone the same and everyone fairly, because otherwise you shouldn't be a judge. A judge has to make a decision based solely on the law, not on his personal feelings. And therefore, it says, don't recognize the face. That is, don't act like you know one guy. Don't make one. The Talmud says, don't have one guy be able to speak as much as he wants, and the next guy you censor. Don't have one that has to stand up and one that's allowed to sit down. Don't have one that's allowed to wear a nice suit, and the other one comes and is not allowed to get a nice suit and has to come in messed up clothes, because then you won't be able to judge them fairly because you're treating them differently. So that's what that means. Now, not taking a bribe is a very interesting one, because if somebody comes, and of course if their intention is to bribe you and you take it, you are now committed to doing what they want. So of course you can't do that. If I have a court case, where I'm the judge of a court case, and I have two people come in, if one of them bribes me, it makes no difference really who's right. I'm going to do what the one who bribed me wants me to do. But that doesn't mean what it says here. What that basically means is if you're an honest thief, you're going to do what people expect of you. You're going to take a bribe and you'll do what you promise. But what does that have to do with blinding the eyes of the wise? It doesn't blind your eyes. You know exactly what you're doing. So it's telling us another point, which is that you have to be careful not to get bribed inadvertently, because that will cause you to be blinded. And it doesn't mean literally blind. It means metaphorically blind, right? That you won't be able to see. That is, you won't be able to use your wisdom, your knowledge, to make a judgment. How is that? So the Gemara gives examples, and it's very interesting because the examples they give are very minute. They'll tell about a fellow who's a judge, and he's going to court, and somebody opens the door for him. So he disqualifies himself because the guy who opened the door was a litigant. Or another one who said something like a praise to the person, to the judge, and then the judge finds out that person's in a case. So they don't allow. They say, I'm going to excuse myself from this case. Now here in Canada, of course, if somebody has a financial relationship with somebody, they have to excuse themselves from the case. But if somebody simply holds the door open for you, or somehow treats you with respect, normal respect, or nicely, and then you say, well, I have to disqualify myself from this case. Nobody does that. Right? So why in our case do they have to do that? So first thing that you have to take in mind a couple of points. You say, first thing, why is it that these rabbis disqualify themselves when somebody does something so minor? Like, he holds a door open for you, something like that. He doesn't push you out of a parking spot. That gives you change for your money so you can pay the meter. Right? Simple things that just about anybody would do. And yet they disqualified themselves. So I think by virtue of the fact that we ask the question, the answer becomes that much more poignant. We're asking this question because we don't really understand what's happening. What's happening is not that they feel like they're being bribed. Is that what it is that when someone does something for you, you have to, according to the Torah, recognize the good. It's called hakarat hatov, recognizing the good. Someone does you a favor, you have to recognize they did you a favor. How? By saying something to them. Thank you. See, even if somebody gets paid to do you a favor, we say thank you. We show gratitude. A mailman puts mail in your mailbox and you see him, you say thank you. But he's paid to do it. So you still say thank you. That he does it. That he does do it. And he does it, right? Maybe he doesn't really want that job. Maybe he doesn't get enough money to live on. Maybe he doesn't really enjoy this type of work. Right? Nevertheless, you say thank you to him for doing it for you. Right? The newspaper guy delivers the paper, you say thank you. All of these types of things, you go to a store and you buy something, you say thank you to the cashier. Like, why? You bought from her. Right? They made money on you. They should say thank you too. Well, they do, but we also say thank you back. Why is it so important for us to show that we appreciate what people do for us? Because that's the sign of a human being. Only human beings really are like this, can understand abstract things. And showing humans that we appreciate what they do for us helps us understand better how that we can show our appreciation to God for what he does for us. Because with a human it's easier to see. But we use that to extrapolate to God. And that's why it's important for us to show gratitude for things. And that's exactly what the rabbis are doing in these cases. In these cases, a guy does nothing more than hold his coat, open a door, smile at him. That's all he did. And nevertheless, the rabbis felt that it was so important to show gratitude. They had to even show gratitude to these people who did almost nothing for them. Nevertheless, they have to show them gratitude that they did that. So they're not going to be bribed, that they won't be honest, but because gratitude is so important to them, then because they have to show gratitude to this person, they might get corrupted. So that's why they don't do it. They would not allow themselves to be judges in such a case. Well, we don't even think of that. What this teaches us is not how precise the rabbis were on not being a judge who should be disqualified. We learn here instead an important message on the idea of gratitude. That even when someone does something for you that you and I think is inconsequential, it makes no difference. Nothing comes of it, or they're paid to do it. Nevertheless, the rabbis and Talmud are telling you, show your appreciation. And the way that they showed it, they had to resign as judges because they naturally appreciated what people did for them, and therefore their ability to judge people correctly was corrupted. Because now this guy did a favor for me, I feel good to him. I feel that he's a nice person. I want to thank him, and therefore they might do the wrong thing. So that's why it says that. Now, the next line, very interesting line, tzedek tzedek tirdof, l'man tichya. It says, righteousness, righteousness you shall follow. Right? It has the word righteousness twice. So that should immediately bring up a question for us, because we know the Torah does not repeat words, does not repeat letters. There's nothing extra in the Torah, not one single letter extra. Everything that's in the Torah has a reason. So if you have a statement that repeats a word, which in translation makes no sense, so then why does he repeat the word? You can't say it was a mistake or that he did it just for effect. There has to be a reason. So what is the statement? Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Righteousness, righteousness you should follow. Right? It uses the word tirdof, which comes from the word rodef. And this means a rodef in Jewish literature is a person who is a pursuer. Right? If you're standing on the street and you see somebody, right, who runs by you on the street, and he says, "Oh, you have to help me. Someone's trying to kill me." And he runs by you, and a second later another guy comes and he runs by you and he's holding a knife, and he says, "Did you see a guy run by you a second? I gotta go kill him." Right? And he runs around the corner chasing the other guy, and you run around the corner, and when you get to the other side of the corner, you see that the person stabbed the first one. Right? So the second guy is called a rodef, a pursuer. He is pursuing someone to kill them. So whenever, if in slang, but in religious Jewish slang, if you call somebody a rodef, you're calling them a pursuing murderer. Right? In other words, you might not want to literally kill me, but you are chasing me in order to defame me, or you're chasing me in order to insult me, or you're chasing me for this reason or that reason. So we use the word rodef, which means a pursuer, chasing. But here they use the same word, and it's very different. Here it says, righteousness, righteousness you should follow. Tirdof comes from the same word, right? That meaning is pursuing, rodef. So you want to say, how can you be a avenger, a pursuer for righteousness? The pursuer is a negative, right? And here it's saying for righteousness. So there's two things to learn from that I've learned from these three words in this sentence. One is the word rodef here means that there are times when it's necessary to do the right thing. You have to actually pursue it. You can't just do it. Right? Sometimes we think if I just give in and do it, it'll be done. That's the end of it. If I have a disagreement with somebody, you know what? It's not worth fighting with them. I'm just going to give in. So you can do that sometimes and just give in. The fight's over, right? Sometimes, though, you have to pursue it to make the fight go away. In order to make things work, you've got to really work at it. Because before this guy's going to forgive me, right, then this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. I have to work all those things out before I can get him to forgive me. I have to pursue peace. I have to pursue not fighting with people. I have to work at it. I have to go out of the way. Just like a person who wants to murder someone else, it's almost impossible to stop him, right? It's called a pursuer. So too we should be when it comes to doing the right thing. So he uses the same expression to tell us that you should have this personal commitment to act in a way that causes righteousness, causes goodness in the world, not bad. Just like a murderer does when he does things bad. The second thing has to do with why it says the word righteousness twice, tzedek, tzedek. As I said before, there's no words repeated in the Torah. So if you see words repeated in the Torah, there has to be a way of understanding that they're not really repeated. So here the Kotzker Rebbe says that it says tzedek, tzedek means im tzedek le tzedek. That is, with righteousness, for righteousness. That is to say, I want to go do a mitzvah. Here's what I want to do. I want to go pray in the synagogue for say Wednesday afternoon, the service of Wednesday afternoon. And I'm downtown. I need to find a shul, and I find a shul, and there's a bunch of cars parked in front of the shul because everyone's going to shul. Well, I'm also going to go to shul, and we're all going to pray the same service. When it ends, it's all over. So what I'll do is I'll just double park on this guy, myself, right? Because he's not going anywhere. He's going to shul just like me. When he comes out, I'll come out, so that he won't be a problem. So I go in, and then what happens, of course, when I'm in the shul, I forget. I'm not in a hurry. I take my time, and somebody asks me a question, or I sit down and study something, and 20 minutes go by after the service is over, and there's a fellow outside who has no idea how he's going to get his car out because I blocked him, right? Even though I said, oh, I didn't hurt anybody, I'm just, right? It's only, he's here for the same time as me. The fact is, I thought I was doing a mitzvah. I'm going to shul, right? But I'm not necessarily doing a mitzvah because I put somebody out very badly. Who knows what they had to do during that 20-minute period? Maybe nothing, but maybe something important. We see this all the time, and when I try to explain this, I always use this example, which is when you go over to the plaza here, over at Chabad Gate and Bathurst, you notice that they have probably parking for about 100 cars, which is usually, I've never seen it overly full. It's got a lot of cars, but not full. But you always get a couple of guys who always park right in front of the store. And if you would stop them and ask them, why are you doing that? It's maybe 8 feet from parking in front of the store, which is not only illegal, but it's extremely perplexing for people because you often can't get through or get out at all from the plaza because of it. You also can get hurt, can hit somebody, you can hit a car, you can do all kinds of stuff because they're parking where it's illegal, right? But they always do. So you stop a guy and you ask him, why are you parking there? They'll always tell you the same thing. It's just for a minute. I'm running in for a pack of cigarettes. I'm running in to get 1 bottle of milk. I'm running in just for the newspaper. I'm just picking up my dry cleaning, right? I'm just grabbing a piece of pizza. Everybody says the same thing, right? In other words, it's only for a short period of time. But of course, it only takes a short period of time to put me out. How long does it take me to drive my car out of the plaza? If I can't get out of the plaza because somebody wants to come in, I want to get out, and you're parked in the middle of the road, no, I can't get out, nobody can get in, right? So what if the guy goes and he says, it's Friday afternoon, he wants to buy flowers for his wife for Shabbos. So he goes and he's in a hurry, it's Friday afternoon. So he parks right in front of the store, he goes and he buys the flowers, right? As he's going in, I stop him. I'm making it up, but I stop him and I say, hey, what are you doing? I'm doing a mitzvah. I got to go get flowers for my wife. So I have to say back to them, im tzedek litzerdek. With righteousness should you do righteousness. If you want to do a mitzvah, then make sure that you do it in a way that it's a mitzvah. right? In order for you, it's very nice of you that you want to go help you give your wife flowers for Shabbos, but because you want to give your wife flowers for Shabbos, there's 30 of us that can't get out of this plaza. You're doing a righteous act, but you're not doing it in a righteous way, right? You're doing it in a bad way, right? And this happens a lot, right? I had a guy I was counseling once, and he could not understand why his wife was so upset with him, because one time he goes, and he's in yeshiva, and it's time to come home for dinner. He's about to come home from dinner, and a guy comes over to him and says, "Listen, I'm really stuck. I need to get to the airport. I got to get home, and I'm finished here. I want to get home, and I can't get to the airport. I can't get a cab or whatever. Can you take me to the airport?" So he takes him to the airport. He comes home an hour and 15 minutes late for dinner, and the dinner's ruined. And his wife's like this young woman. She's in tears. So he comes in, and the first thing he says, even before he notices what's going on in the house, is, I merited such a great mitzvah today. I was able to drive someone to the airport, and because I took him to the airport, he was able to make his plane and get home to see his family. And his wife, in her head, says, and you coming home to see your family doesn't mean anything, right? You're doing a mitzvah of kindness to help this guy out, and I'm paying for it. My dinner that I spent all this time making for you is ruined. Now I have no dinner for you, and all the work I put in was wasted because you decided to go do this mitzvah. So it's important to do the mitzvah, but not at somebody else's expense. Or I tell guys all the time when they meet with me after they get married, it's very nice to have stringent opinions in Jewish law, right? For instance, there's different opinions what time Shabbat ends. It could end at 42 minutes after sunset. It could be 45, it could be 60, it could be 72, it could even be more than 72. But 72 is the most that I hear people ever saying, that whatever time sunset is, I don't want to break Shabbos, so I'm going to wait 72 minutes after sunset, and then I know Shabbos is over. And I'll keep Shabbos until that point. So it's a very nice thing. Why? It's sometimes people want to go the extra mile and do something extra. You don't have to do it, but you want to say, I want to keep 72 minutes instead of 45 minutes, so then I'll keep 72 minutes. But it's an extra bonus that he gets. But now that he's getting married, his keeping 72 minutes is basically adding a half hour to the time Shabbos is over, which for a good portion of the year will make it impossible for him to go out with his wife on Saturday nights. Up until now, Shabbos is over, he goes home, they make Havdalah, they go out. Now he has to add a half hour to 45 minutes before he can go home, right, to get his wife. So if they were going to a movie or to a play or something that had a schedule, that's it. They're not going to make it, right? So on the one hand, he's doing a good thing. He's keeping Shabbos extra time, and he wants to make sure that he doesn't break it, and he's keeping it. He goes to the letter, to the most extreme opinion, and that's what he keeps. But who's paying the bill? Is he paying the bill to do this? In other words, he gets the merit, but whenever you do an extra thing like this, there's always effort. Whose effort is in this? It wasn't his effort, because he's the one who decided he's going to stay in shul. It's his wife who's waiting for him to come home because she's getting all frustrated by herself and she wants to go out with her husband. And now, because he made this rule, he can't go out with her, right? Because it's still Shabbos for another half hour. So it takes another 6-7 weeks before that time is gone, right? When the clock changes. So it's very nice that he wants to follow the extra time for Shabbos, but he can't do it at somebody else's expense. You have to do it at your own expense. If you do it at your own expense, that's fine. You do it at somebody else's expense, that's not good. And that why? Because he's doing righteous, but he's not doing it in a righteous way. Right? You can't steal money to give tzedakah. Right? That's literal, right? That's easy. I can't go to I can't be Robin Hood and steal from the rich and give to the poor. It doesn't work. No such thing for us. Right? You can't, in order to keep a mitzvah, you cannot break a mitzvah. Even a different mitzvah, right? You have a mitzvah, you want to go buy flowers for your spouse for Shabbos. That's very nice, but you can't butt in line, and you can't steal the flowers because the line it takes too long. You let the florist know that you're coming in late, and you do it. You come in and you pick it up, and they'll be prepared for you, right? That's the idea. Right? So that's when it tells us tzedek tirdof. It's really telling us with righteousness to righteousness. The way the means are not justified by the end. The end is a mitzvah, but the means to do the mitzvah is not. Right? The means to do the mitzvah is just the opposite. It has to be done right. All right, so that's tzedek tirdov. Now, after we have this very interesting paragraph of judges and policemen and how the judge should act and how the people should act, then it says, Lo siti lecha asherah kol eitz lamizbeach. Don't plant a tree next to the altar. What's going on here? Like, what did you do? Take a nap and woke up on a different topic altogether? But we're talking about judges and people, and suddenly we go from mitzvahs that have to do with people and issues dealing with people to a mitzvah that has to do with God, which makes, on a simple level, no sense. Right? Righteousness you should follow, and don't plant a tree next to the altar in the temple. Okay, what's it got to do with it? So it's not coincidental. The first thing is, what does it mean? An asherah was a type of a tree, and Rashi explains it, so does the Gemara, and many places do, that was used for idol worship. It was either they would actually worship the tree, and we have like druids who have beliefs in trees having special powers, or they use it to mark the place of idol worship. In other words, if you went to a strange city, you want to go pray? How do you know where to go? So if it's a mosque, they look for the red dome in the tower. If it's a church, they look for the big, the tower, what do they call it, steeple. Right? So how do you know when you're going to an idol worship place? So one of the things they would do is that they would plant a tree outside of the idol worship place that would grow quickly so that people would see the tree. And they knew that if you see the tree, that's where we're going to worship idols. That's where the church is that worships idols. That's where we're going. So that's what they would do. That was a custom in ancient societies, that they would put a tree there because you could find the tree and you knew to look for it. So that tree is referred to as an asherah. So don't plant an asherah near your altar, because it makes it appear that you're a place of idol worship, and we don't believe in idol worship. However, we can understand this a little differently. If you read enough articles, you come across what they call the tree huggers. The tree huggers are environmentalists who go, in my opinion, a bit too far. They will risk human life. Some of them will risk human life in order to save vegetation. Right? You can say they risk human life to save animal life, but this is even further away. This is vegetation. So what do? They'll go out to places like Oregon and Washington State, and they'll go up into the hardwood trees, and they'll take spikes, nails, and they'll put them into the tree. And then they'll leave. And what happens is when the workmen come with the chainsaws to cut down the tree, the chainsaw hits the metal spike inside of the tree. And of course it can't cut it so easily. It bounces back and it'll injure the guy cutting. So they do this on purpose in order to make it that people can't get in and cut down the trees. They don't want to cut down the trees. So you should be afraid to try to cut down the trees because you're going to get hurt because we put these nails in here. And people got hurt. What are they saying? They're saying that the life of a tree is at least as important as the life of a human, if not more. That's what they're saying. Right? That's what the tree huggers are saying. It's a nice way of saying it. But they're basically environmental terrorists. Right? They're prepared to hurt humans in order to save vegetation. The idea that when God created the world and he put these beautiful things in, like a tree, which is so majestic, it can be, you can go out to California, they got these trees 300 feet tall, the sequoias, these giant trees. When you go to see these types of things, it's amazing, right? It's just grandeur, and it makes you think of God, because how amazingly big and powerful these things are, and how special they can be. So if that's the case, then with the case of this with us, we don't believe that trees should have this kind of power. I mean, trees are from God. God has the power. God created them, right? So for a person to believe that a tree has this kind of power, it is so important that I'm actually going to hurt people because I don't want them to mess up the environment, right? I'm going to be an environmental terrorist to stop people from destroying the environment. You're equating humans to the environment. You're saying the world is as important as a person. That's idol worship. That's what idol worship is. Idol worship is the praying to a power that doesn't really have power. and making it to that power is equal to a human being or to God, and we don't follow that. So therefore, it says a person should not plant this kind of tree near the altar because it's sending the wrong message, either historically because they used to put it by idol worship, or the fact is we understand that there are people who actually believe that the way to have power and to be in this world is through the environment, it's through the trees, it's through nature. Nature is an amazingly powerful thing. But we say no, the only real power in this world comes from God. Therefore, we don't plant such a tree. What else we got? Okay. We also have in here the laws of a false witness and the laws of a witch. Let's talk about the laws of a witch for a minute. I don't even have to see it, but it says, "Do not suffer a witch to live." That's what it says. Do not suffer a witch to live. That means why that is that expression means that the life of a witch is suffering for the witch. A person whose life is filled with black magic, with evil, and perpetuation of evil, their very life is painful to them, even to them. So you're suffering them to live. You're causing them to suffer by their being alive. And it says that a person who's a witch should not be living. So this raises a big question in Judaism: is there such a thing as magic? We've discussed this in one of my classes, but there's a famous argument between the early commentaries as to does magic exist, like black magic. We believe that all the power of the world comes from God. So what kind of power could there be to evil if evil is not from God? Right? There are religions that believe, for instance, of a struggle that goes on between God and Satan, and you can choose to be on the side of Satan or the side of God. If you're on the side, ultimately God will win, they believe, but God and Satan fight each other. So you see that they give power to God and they give power to Satan, as if there's two forces in the world. And to us as Jews, we consider that heresy. There is only one force, only one power in the world, and that's God. Anything that seems to have power is only an extension of God's will, that God wants it to do this. So if the nature is so powerful that it could blow your house down, it's not because nature, right, is a power of its own. It's because God gives it that power. It allows it to do it. But it comes from God. We see this explicit. If you look in the book of Job, in the first chapter, you have in there a meeting going on. It's like a board meeting. And God is chairman of the board. And he calls all of his ministering angels to a meeting. And sitting at the table is one angel called Satan. So one has to ask, if Satan is the source of evil in the world, and he certainly has some type of celestial power, what's he doing at the table with God, where God's calling all his angels? And the answer is that Satan is an angel, just like Michael and Gabriel and the other angels, and they have a job to do. And as long as they do their job, they're doing what they're supposed to do, what God wants from them. What does he want of Satan? The job of Satan is to lose. He's to tempt you and lose. That's his job. He's supposed to, basically, you decide you're going to keep kosher, and you're driving down the street and you get hungry. Now you can go and eat where it's cheap and fast. That's what you want to do. You don't want to be hungry anymore. Or you can change and go in and do what you should do, right? Not what you want to do. You should do the right thing or do what you want to do. Right? When a person does the right thing, they're following, right? They're following the will of God. Right? God says, "I want you to get up in the morning and go to shul, pray in shul." So you get up in the morning to go to shul. Well, I'm too tired to get up today. So I wake up to get up, and the Yetzer Hara, my advice inside of me says, "Oh, don't get up, it's too cold." Right? Get up in an hour, you'll pray in an hour. Right? So I miss it. I don't make it in time for the service because I got up so late. So if I'm listening to the Yetzer Hara, if I'm listening to the Satan inside of me, I'm doing what I want to do. Right? I want to sleep. If I listen to my conscience, so to speak, I'm then thinking about what God wants me to do. That's what I should do. So the argument is what you should do versus what you want to do. And you should do the right thing. Right? Why is it that we're tempted to do the wrong thing, because without that temptation, there's no reward to do the right thing. If you don't want to do the wrong thing, then you aren't rewarded for doing the right thing. Right? So if I would say to you, you can't eat hamburgers, and you don't like hamburgers, so what kind of big deal? It's no big deal. You won't eat it. My father told me a story once, and he was in the Navy in World War II, and him and another guy were supposed to guard the jeeps. And my father and the guy tells my father, you know what, I do this all the time. Nobody ever comes. It's just go in the jeep, we'll go to sleep. We'll wake up in the morning, and we did our job, and we already got a night's sleep too. So of course what happens, my father does it with them, and they get caught. And they're brought in front of the court in the Navy, what are they going to do? So the guy says, all right, from now, for the next 30 days, no liquor. You can't have any liquor, the judge tells him. That's your punishment. So my father starts to laugh, because he doesn't drink. He's an 18-year-old kid, but he didn't drink. So the other guy hits my father and says, shut up. You're going to get in real trouble, right? Well, it's not much of a punishment to punish my father and tell him he can't drink. He doesn't drink, right? Yeah, right. So, but you have to be tempted. If they told my father you couldn't have ice cream, he'd be tempted to have ice cream. That would be a punishment, right? So, what the Yetzer Hara does, what the Satan does inside of us, is it tempts us to do something, and then we have to choose to do the right thing, right? So that means that the Satan is created to lose. That's his job, is to fail. He wants to tempt you, and then when you succeed, he's done his job. When he succeeds, then it's not good, right? He wants you to succeed, because he's working for God. His job is to tempt you, but for you not to do it, right? God doesn't want you to do it, right? It's not that he's a power of his own, right? That's how we understand the idea of having other power in the world. To say that there's a witch means that she has access for no meritorious reason and not do any effort on her own to be able to control things through black magic, through another power other than God. Right? We believe that such a thing is not possible. So according to that, then that's what I've explained to you is the Rambam's opinion about a witch. The Rambam, when he talks about witches and warlocks and ghosts and all of this kind of stuff, he says there's no such thing. There is no such thing as black magic. There's no such thing as evil forces. There's no such thing as somebody cursing you, and the negative forces, the demons will come and get you. The Rambam says there's no such thing, right? So then the Ramban, different person, says there is, and the Ramban says that his rhetorical question to the Rambam is, if there's no such thing as other powers, then what was the witch doing in the first place? What was she doing? If there's no magic, so what was it? She was like a magician, like she in Las Vegas, like pretending. Well, if she was pretending, and they said we're going to kill you, she'd say, "Hey, I was just pretending. I'm not a witch. A real witch wouldn't be pretending. Right? I'm only pretending." So what does the Rambam mean? If he says there's no such thing as black magic, how can you get arrested, so to speak, for performing black magic if there's no such thing, right? And why would the Torah says you should kill a witch? But she's not a witch. There are no witches because there's no black magic. So what's the Torah talking about? The Ramban says that there actually is black magic. That when God created the world, he created the world with an equilibrium, a balance. Because if you have this balance, then you can choose. If I say to you, you have to keep kosher, but I make everything kosher, so then there's no big deal. You just eat whatever you want, and everything's kosher. There's no issue. But if I say to you, I want to do a mitzvah, and I put you in a place where you now have an equal choice, right? I put you somewhere where you're hungry, and there's two hamburger shops. One's kosher, one's not kosher. The one that's kosher is more expensive. The one that's not kosher is cheaper. The one that's not kosher is closer. The one that's kosher is a little further. And now you have to decide what you're going to do. You're hungry right now, and you want to go get a hamburger. Do you get kosher or not kosher? So you have reason to go either way. God says eat kosher. Your pocketbook and your stomach says eat unkosher because you need the money and it's closer. So you have now a dilemma. The negative side of that dilemma is black magic, the Ramban says. He says that's the power of black magic. Therefore, it's what draws you to do the wrong thing. So there is such a thing, he says, in the world. He says, and therefore God says don't use it. I don't want you to use it. It's there because I wanted to create a balance in the world. Because if I'm going to create goodness in the world, there has to be a balance of evil in the world so that goodness can flourish. Well, if there's only goodness in the world, no evil at all, then there is no goodness either. Because that's everything. Right? You have to have good and bad. So God said, I'm going to create a balance. Right? If, for instance, if I'd say to you, if you keep Shabbos, you're going to be rich. And as soon as Shabbos is over, you go home and you go to your room and you take your candle, right? And you're about to light the candle and $1 million falls out of the bag, right? Well, God said if you keep Shabbos, you'll be rich. You got your $1 million. And imagine if it happens to every single person. Every person who keeps Shabbos gets $1 million, right? Immediately, right? Miraculously. So now you have a question. Shabbos is coming. Should you keep Shabbos next week or not? So am I giving you a fair choice? Of course not. I've just stacked the cards. Because you might say Shabbos is stupid, it's ridiculous, what am I going to keep it for? That's from thousands of years ago. It's a different world today. Turning on the television and turning on the lights does not work. Right? What are you giving me a hard time for? That's for the old times, right? But as soon as I say to you, but you'll make $1 million, suddenly all those arguments are gone. Why? Because you want the $1 million, and you're willing to keep Shabbos for 1 week to get $1 million. It's not a big deal for you, right? But the idea is that what's happened is I've taken away your balance. There's no longer a real choice. If you can, one way you get to drive your car, the other way you get $1 million. Which one would you do? Of course, you'd do the $1 million. You drive your car enough tomorrow. You don't have to wait to do it today. Right? That means I've thrown off that balance. The positive and negative forces in the world create the balance, so that you have a choice. You're tempted to steal and tempted not to steal. You're tempted to eat kosher, tempted not to eat kosher. Everything is a balance. As soon as that balance is thrown off, where I say anybody who's religious is going to have a perfect life and never get sick, and you start noticing that everyone's religious never gets sick, then you're going to be you're darn well going to be religious. And not because you believe in God, but because you don't want to get sick. That means that the balance is gone. So the Ramban says that the negative forces in the world is what creates the balance. So that when I say to you, you should keep Shabbos, it's not because you'll get $1 million at the end of Shabbos. It's because it's the right thing to do, and you do it. You might get some positive feeling from it, but you're doing the right thing. Why? Because there's a balance now. You have no real extraordinary result if you keep it or you don't keep it. It's balanced. So you want to do the right thing. That's how the ethical question comes in, and that's how you get merit, by doing the right thing. So that whole idea, the Ramban says, comes to prove that they have such a thing as black magic or negative forces. And what does a witch do? She harnesses it, and she uses the black magic for her own gain. So that's why the Ramban says you should kill her, because you shouldn't live that way. Hashem does not want you to follow that. He wants you to follow the positive forces in the world. If you follow the negative forces, it's a bad thing. You're going to cause negative things in the world. You're not going to be helping the world. So the Torah says if such a person is doing that, and they're talking about it and trying to influence people, you have to kill them. Not today, by the way. Back then, you had to kill them, because that's what they were doing. So that's what it's talking about here when it shows you the idea of this a witch when it comes to black magic. That most of us would say, that most of us, I think for the most part, follow the Ramban, which is that there is such a thing as black magic, but it's simply the balance that God creates in the world, so that this black magic can help us do the right thing by failing. And that's what it seems to say. Okay. We have on 1033, we talk about prophecy, and we talk about a false prophet. So let's understand what they are. Prophecy is a human attainable level of holiness. That is, at many times in history, human beings had the ability to work on themselves, to purify themselves, to become holier, and they could get to the level of being a prophet. A prophet means that that God talks to you, and you can have a conversation with God. that you actually have these things happen. Sometimes it's done in a fugue state, sort of like, you're not yourself, you sort of in a trance. For some prophets, it was done during a dream. For the greatest prophets, it was like talking to God. Like Moshe, it says like he looked at God and talked to him, as if he was right next to him. Right? That was the highest level of a prophet. But as it goes down, prophecy is more and more obscure. Right? It's not as evident to see. But it's a human ability to acquire. You can become a prophet. Today it's almost impossible to be a prophet, but there are times in history when an average human who decided, he'd say, okay, Shlomi, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a prophet. And he could do that. He could grow up and be a prophet. There were thousands of prophets in the world, including men and women. The reason that you don't know about them is because they had nothing to say to you. They only spoke for their time. Right? A prophet, you go to a prophet and say, I'd like you to meet this woman. I want to marry her. Is she the right woman for me? And the prophet can look into her soul and look into your soul and say yes or no. And in a way that we can't. You say, I'm not really doing so well in this job. I'm thinking of changing careers. And he can look into your soul and say, you're not going to be a very good accountant. Don't do it. They could be very definitive because the prophet had that ability at a very high level, right? That high level of prophecy is something that we can attain at one time in history. Today, like I said, it's too hard, but we could do that, where we actually are able to talk to God. So when you have a true prophet, the true prophet has rules. First thing is he has to prophesize. So there's rules of prophecy. Like for instance, if I'd say to you that tomorrow the sun will go up, and it'll set somewhere about 8:23 at night. And if I'd say that to you, you'd say that's not a prophecy. I could look in the newspaper, I could see that. Right? It'll tell me when the sun will set tomorrow. That's not prophecy. So I'll say, okay, you're right. But on today's date, 10 years ago, the sun set at 8:23. And you say, well, that's also not prophecy. I can look that up too. That's history. That already happened. So there's rules of prophecy. For instance, a prophet cannot tell you something that's totally logical, because you don't need to be a prophet to know that, right? If I go to a store and it's 30% off, my wife always says to me, okay, this dress costs $60, is 30% off. How much does the dress cost? So I can tell her if I use it in my head, right? I can figure it out how much it is. I have that ability to do. So the idea with prophecy is that a prophet has the ability to do certain things like this, right? I mean, much greater things than that, that not everyone else can do, because they've worked on themselves and built themselves up so that they now have the ability to relate to God and to see within the essence of each person. And any person who works hard enough on themselves is able to acquire that level. And there were times, as I said, there were thousands of men and women who were prophets who for the most part spoke only for their time. Like I said, they told you about who your wife should be, who your husband should be, where you should work. Right? You came and asked them, they tell you. They could look inside of you and they could say, this woman is not for you. This thing's not for you. This one is for you. This is good. This is not good. And they weren't just making it up. They could look into your soul and see the answer. So they can look into her soul and see if your souls match up. Right? That was very common. That's what a prophet did. That's a real prophet. A false prophet. I was telling you some of the rules of the prophets. So one rule of the prophet is that whatever I tell you is going to happen, right? It has to be something you wouldn't know otherwise, right? Like if I tell you the sun's going to rise, set tomorrow at 8:25, that's not something that a prophet has to tell you. You can look in the newspaper. You can figure it out mathematically. If I would tell you that, let's say Hillary Clinton is going to become an Orthodox Jew tomorrow, and she's going to wear skirts, no more pantsuits, and she's going to wear a wig, and she's going to move to Israel. Right? If I say that this is going to happen tomorrow, right, and it happens tomorrow, that's prophecy. It's absurd. Right? It's not something you'd expect to happen. There's no way you can anticipate this, right? So therefore, those are examples of something that could be prophecy. And a prophet must be 100% correct. A prophecy can't be 99% correct, because you get it from God. So either it's totally correct or it's totally false. A prophecy with any detail that's off is totally false, which means the person who said it is a liar. He's not a prophet. He's making it up. right? Therefore, they have a thing called the prophet, who can help guide you. Then they have a thing called a false prophet, which is a person who thinks, or who wants you to think, that they're a prophet. And they, let's say in a more extreme case, is that they'll use it for their own gain. They'll go and tell you to do something because it's good for them, right? Sure, you should marry this woman because her father said if I get his daughter married, he'll give me $5,000. So sure, you should marry her because it's good for him. It's not good for you. He's not a real prophet. He only comes in and tells you things that are absurd, that are not really absurd, that are expected. He's not really a prophet. So a false prophet is a very dangerous thing because he claims to speak in the name of God. And when he says something, and you don't know that he's lying, yeah, you can do all types of crazy things. So they take it very seriously when somebody is a false prophet, that they don't allow them to live. Now we have to understand, we're using this expression a lot today about that someone deserves to die, or Judaism would say they should be killed. Right? You probably heard the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says that if one person is killed in 70 years in a Jewish court, that's considered a bloody court. And Rabbi Akiva said, if I was the head of the court, then nobody would ever get killed. So you could say, like, well, you break Shabbos, you get killed. You break kosher, you get killed. You do the prophet, you get killed. All these things, you get killed. How come no one got killed? So the answer is that our goal is not to kill people. That's not what happens with us. Our system of what we call jurisprudence, our court system, is very different than what one would expect. You see, in Canada, if I'm really smart and I plan well, I could probably outwit the police and get away with something. Find a way to steal some fancy jewels or something that's kept in a very secure place. I could probably find a way to steal it. Right? I could probably do that. The idea being is that when a person, how do we put it? A person wants to do prophetically the right thing. So the idea in the case of being a prophet with all of this, right, which is where we were, right? I just lost track of the word, right? Okay, so that the prophet's job is to guide you to do the right thing. Right? He's there to assist you. If he uses his ability to speak to God, so to speak, when he's not really speaking to God, to make you do something that's good for him or that's not good for you, that's very dangerous for Judaism. So therefore, you're supposed to kill them. And then I said what it means to kill is it's very rare. Because in Judaism, you have to do many things in order to kill someone. Because in Canada, you see, if you're smart and you break the law, and you can get away with it. It's possible to get away with it. Right? In Judaism, when you break the law, you got caught. God caught you immediately, as soon as you did it. You're going to be punished or rewarded for what you did. Now, are human beings going to catch you? Maybe, maybe not. And they might not catch you. Maybe you are smarter than the human beings around you, and you can get away with it. But you got caught. You're going to pay. And the way we look at it is that you're actually lucky if you get caught in this world. Because if you're only caught by God and he only can punish you in the next world, it's much worse. Better you should be punished in this world. Here, there's only so much they can do to you and your body will die. In the next world, you're a soul. God can punish you forever. Right? It's much worse, the punishment in the next world. So a person should want, if they're going to do something wrong and they want to repent for it, that's fine. But if they don't repent and they get caught in this world, they're actually more fortunate because then they can atone for what they did wrong by being killed. But if a person doesn't, they don't get caught. So then they, quote, got away with it. Well, they didn't really. They pay for it in the world to come. So our whole idea of a court system is different than in Canada. Because in Canada, if a guy steals and does not get convicted, he got away with it. In Judaism, if a guy steals and does not get convicted, he still is going to get paid for it even worse from God than from us. If he's fortunate, we're going to be able to prosecute him and make him pay for it. Because better he should pay for it in this world than in the next world. That's really how we see it. And therefore, it's very rare throughout Jewish history that they ever killed anybody. Because they wanted to make sure that it was understood that it's very hard to get convicted of a crime. Right? They never wanted to convict the wrong person. Like here in Canada, you don't want to convict the wrong person. They go to great lengths not to, but they do it. Right? You got all these guys like Guy Paul Moran. Remember, he was in jail for his whole life. And then the DNA gets invented, this test for DNA. They find out he didn't do the crime. His whole life is gone, right? Because they convicted an innocent person. In Judaism, we're prepared to let many guilty people go rather than convict one innocent person, because we know the guilty people are going to get punished. We know it. God's going to punish them. If they were lucky, we would punish them, but they're not lucky. God's going to punish them. Right? That's how we see it. So we shouldn't misunderstand and think, like the world likes to say, that the Old Testament God, meaning the God in the Torah, is a vengeable God. So, right, he'll kill you for this, and he'll smite you, and he'll smote that guy, and he'll do that, right, over and over and over. Like, you hear about killing all these people, right? That's because whoever uses that expression in the media or in the West never read the Torah. They don't understand that while the Torah says a person is liable for their own death, that there's no such thing. Because after if you go and you do something wrong, if you don't get caught, God caught you. If you do get caught, then humans caught you. Either way, you're caught. And the best thing is not to do the thing wrong. Well, in the civil world, as long as I'm smarter than the police, I just keep doing it. Right? It's like when you talk to your accountant says, okay, I'll do your taxes. There's two things I don't want to do for you. One is, I'm not going to be crazy and report every single thing. Right? You got $10 from your mother for a birthday gift, I'm not reporting it. On the other hand, I'm also not going to lie for you. We have to have the center ground in order for me to do your taxes, the accountant says. Right? I can't go too far to the extreme either way, right? Because of the two extremes, right, are too obvious. I have to have something that's black and white. So you say, well, how do you want me to do this? The accountant asks you. Do you want me to push the envelope, right? Try to get you every dollar back from the government that you can without actually committing fraud, or do you want me to just say, I don't want any trouble from the government, just give them what they ask for, and don't find any loopholes, and don't find any ways of getting me money back. I'm not interested. I just don't want to deal with them. Which way do you want to do it? So if you want to do it the first way, right, where the accountant is going to try to find rules that will apply to you, that therefore he can sort of go into gray areas, so then Revenue Canada can start up with him. Right? He may win, he may lose. Right? But if he actually does something that's wrong, he's going to lose. Right? It won't work. So here was where we understand the difference in the two cases. The guy, the accountant who's doing your taxes is dealing with the middle ground, where it's not so obvious. I'm going to push the envelope, and I'm going to make Revenue Canada fight you in order to get this money, if they notice it. Right? And if they notice it, then they say that you have to pay us, then you can fight them, and you'll get your money. You'll probably get your money back. Maybe not, but they won't say that you did it on purpose. And that's where we draw the line. As long as it's not done purposely, you can push the envelope. In this world, I can be aggressive in how I do things. I can push, but I can't break the rules. I can't, right? I can be aggressive and fight. Let's say I want to be the mayor of Toronto. I can be aggressive and fight for it and stand up for myself and knock down my opponents, right, as long as I'm reasonable about it. I can do all that. Right? That's possible to do, but I can't, right, go to the extreme where I'm actually going to destroy things and hurt people and take away the whole concept. I have to be in that middle ground where the Torah lets me. If I go to the ends, then the Torah says, no, you're going to get killed. We're not going to allow it. And they make it very difficult to accomplish. So the case I gave you earlier, the guy's running down the street, right, and he says, help me, someone's chasing me, they're going to murder me. And he runs by you and turns the corner. And then another guy comes running by you, and he's holding a knife, and he says, did you see this other guy? I'm going to get him and kill him. Right? And he runs off and he turns the corner. And you go running after him, and you turn the corner, and you see the first guy on the floor bleeding, and the second guy with a knife in his hand, and blood coming off the knife, and blood all over his clothes. So did you just catch a murderer? You think so, right? He told you he was going to kill him. Right? The first guy says the second guy's going to kill me. And 5 seconds later, you turn the corner, you see the guy is laying stabbed, and another guy holding a knife in his hand on top of him. So I'd say you saw a murder, but Jewish law would say you didn't see a murder. Jewish law says you're supposing there's a murder. In order for Jewish law to say that there's a murder, first thing is you have to witness it. Second thing is you witnessing is not enough. You need two witnesses. And they can't be related to each other or to the people involved in the case. So it has to be two random strangers standing on the street. And they have to warn the person. Do you know that if you kill him, then Jewish law requires us to kill you? Do you know that? Do you still want to kill him? Okay, go ahead, and but you know what's going to happen to you. Right? That all of that has to happen. Why? Because we care that you're punished in this world, but you didn't get away with it if you're not punished. You got caught. Right? You are caught. God caught you. God will punish you.